Yo, welcome back to Cage Calculated. Today, we're doing the UFC Mexico Fight Night predictions, and yeah, this is a bad one, guys. This one's tough to look at. Making this PowerPoint was very difficult for me. Finding pictures of some of these fighters was very difficult for me, and I want to preface this entire video by saying there is going to be zero disrespect to the fighters. This is zero offensive anything to the fighters. There's nothing against them. This is, they've worked really hard to get to this moment. This is me going to be bitching to the UFC. This fight card is a complete travesty. I fully expect there to be a riot before the fight card, because there's already riots going on now in Mexico. Shout out the entire thing going on right now. This fight card was almost moved to the Apex, which would have been, you know how I feel about the Apex. This is going to be a riot before, and then heaven forbid Loner Kavanaugh wins, and it's going to be a third riot possibly after the fight if a bunch of the Mexicans get beat on this card. And look, it's a Mexican, regional scene fight card. You do have King Green, you have Daniel Zellhuber, Cheetah Vera is out there somewhere, but this is a tough one, man. And I don't want to get too into it, but Damian Penis is the first fight. Damian Penis, and again, if this dude's last name's Penis, he better be a damn good fighter, because good lord, if he's not, that's just tough to see. But yeah, let's just get into it. I'm gonna try and have energy here. I'm gonna try and have some passion for the sport, but this is a very, very shitty fight card. And 326 is next weekend. Still don't have a co-main event. I'm guessing it's just gonna be Caio Borrello versus Renier de Ritter. I guess at this point we're just gonna make shit up. And I'm gonna put the meme of the UFC White House card that Tristan made. Yeah, dude, we are struggling and limping our way to the UFC White House card based on some of these matchmaking bouts. We do have the Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira fight going on at 327, but I mean, good lord, these are really, really tough to see. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Damian Penis versus Wes Schultz. Wes Schultz, man, he's a grappler. He got beat by Mansour Abdul Malik. That's just bound to happen. Not too bad, coming off of a submission win in his last Contender Series fight, 1 in 2 minutes. Again, grappler. 62% of his wins come from submission, 55.57 takedown average per 15 minutes, around 40% accuracy. So not too bad. He's not bad. He's not a bad fighter, but the Penis should be undefeated. Only has one loss via DQ. It was an illegal kick. 4 straight finishes, had a minute 46 doctor stoppage TKO in the Contender Series. And 87% of his wins come from KO. He has length, he has girth. The Penis just looked really hard into this fight. 66% of his wins come from first round. I'm sorry, dude. And again, this is no disrespect. But I do have the Penis winning by knockout. So he's just the favorite. I love Penis, man. What can we say? The next fight we're going to have on this card is Francis Fire Marshall, that's a cool nickname, versus Eric Silva. This dude fights once a decade. Francis Marshall, man, he had a good fight against Myron Santos and arguably won and lost in the split decision. You could argue that he won, and that would look really, really good on his resume. The loss doesn't look bad. Myron Santos is one of the better prospects in the featherweight division, but Francis Marshall did beat Connor Matthews, has a 12-year experience gap in this fight against Eric Silva, is more active and still younger, almost has the same amount of fights as Eric Silva, which is insane. Which, no offense to Eric Silva, he's had some pretty crappy injury luck, but you fight once every 2 years. It's not really impressive. This guy's kind of just dog food to one of the better, or to the younger prospects in this division trying to move people up. So I think that's going to be the scenario in this one. But Francis Marshall fights out of American Top Team. 33% of his strikes are accurate, 45% takedown accuracy, and 91% of his fights are from standing, or strikes come from standing. So I do have a huge notepad for this. I had to take a lot of notes, so just bear with me as I'm reading, because yeah, I don't know who any of these guys are. Eric Silva got knocked out by Muhammad Naimov, or kind of TKO'd. I think he tore his Achilles or ACL or something. It was not good against Muhammad Naimov in about 45 seconds. And again got submitted by TJ Brown. Don't know who that is. They're out of the UFC now, so that's not a good loss. But does have a 58% first-round finish rate, is a little bit more of a grappler, 70% significant strike accuracy, 1.57 strikes absorbed per minute. All of these stats point to the direction of this guy might be not too bad, and I think that he's not that bad. I was talking to Tristan about this one. He's like, dude, I might go Eric Silva, but looking into his film, he is a bit of a fraud. He just doesn't fight long enough in fights to actually put in any decent stats. Does have almost a 4 takedown average per 15 minutes, but I just expect Francis Marshall to be able to piece him up on the feet. I do have Marshall winning by knockout. I think his takedown defense will be fine in this one. Yeah, I mean, Eric Silva, just, it's time to let it go, buddy. Time has passed by, and you know, when you fight once every 3 years, it just doesn't look good on the resume. Next, we'll talk about Ernesta Karakaite. I'm hoping I'm saying her name right, versus Regina Terran, a late replacement for Sofia Montenegro. I will preface by saying I just don't know enough about Regina Terran. I looked at some of her Tapology profile. Again, undefeated, has, I think, like 4 straight finishes, but this is against nobodies in her, I don't know what division or what regional scene she's in, but it's against kind of a bunch of cans. So I think Ernesta Karakaite will win this one. She did beat Carly Judas, who did win last week in the first fight of that card. So pretty good looking win in that one. She is a little bit of a decision machine, but the only thing I can see happening is like maybe Regina Terran just catches her, and just because she's, you know, no one really knows much about her. But I expect Ernesta to win this one. She does have the UFC competition. She has beaten UFC competition, and I think this is a huge step up, especially short notice for Regina Terran. I'll go Karakaite by unanimous decision. Oh boy, Douglas Silva de Andrade. Yeah, so the unction is back. We're going to be talking about a 40-year-old fighting who used to, you know, be worth a damn, but this is kind of rough to look at. Yeah, I mean, 40 years old. 69% of his wins do come from KO. He has fought some of the best competition that featherweight and bantamweight does have to offer. But has beaten Chito Vera and Henan Barao, you know, when the dinosaurs roamed, but did lose to Saito Magomedov, which isn't great, and then lost to Lerone Murphy, Piotr Yan, Rob Font. No, nothing embarrassing there, but, you know, just kind of giving you a context of his resume. Has fought some of the best, but 92% of his fights do come from standing, so he does like to stay and bang with fighters. Javier Reyes, only one Contender Series win. That's his only fight in the UFC or under the UFC name. Was a knockout in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Has a 5-inch reach advantage in this one as well. You know, pretty well rounded. Beats up South American nobodies, so that's kind of cool. And just, I can't take into of his stats into account too much, just because it's such a limited sample size. But I do have Reyes winning by unanimous decision. I'm not entirely confident in that one. I could see Douglas Silva de Andrade just kind of like roaching his way to a win. I don't know enough about Javier Reyes. I think he's better, and the age difference is better. I think Silva de Andrade does have the resume to make this fight closer than what the odds are suggesting. So I think the value is there with Silva de Andrade, but I'm going to go Javier Reyes. I'm just kind of trying to go with the guy who I think is going to win. I just think he's going to win, and the age is going to be a little bit of a factor in this one. Next, we'll talk about Christian Quinones versus Chris Matino. This is one of Tristan's favorite fighters, Chris Matino. This dude is an absolute walking punching bag. Got absolutely mauled by Malcolm Wellmaker, and then, I mean, if you hadn't seen the Sean O'Malley beat down of this dude, he's been fed to the wolves at every single, you know, scenario. But you know, it is what it is. You have to fight some of the best, and when you're in the UFC, he's just not had any good luck. And Christian Quinones isn't that great either. I mean, coming off a 2 straight loss via submission, one against Rione Barcelos, which isn't, you know, the worst, but he is more of a stand and bang guy. 56% of his wins do come from KO. Does have a little bit of takedown ability, 1.37 per 15, so not like the worst in the world. But Matino, man, I just want to say 14.68 strikes absorbed per 15 minutes is absolutely insane, and that's mostly because of Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley set a couple UFC records against this dude, and it was just kind of like the entire fight was like watching a dog get put down. It was sad. It was really hard to watch, and I don't know how the referee didn't stop it hundreds of times. I mean, shout out to Matino's chin in that fight. That was just unbelievable, but I think it took probably at least 5 to 6 years off his career, and did get, you know, mauled by Wellmaker and slimed out. You know, he is a stand and bang guy. 99% of his strikes do come from standing. I do have Quinones winning by unanimous decision, and I'll even upgrade it to a knockout. I think Christian Quinones will knock this dude out. I think Chris Matino is going to walk forward like the bag of milk he is and just get mauled and slimed. And Christian Quinones isn't even that good, but I think he's just better than Chris Matino. which isn't saying much, but you know, this is what the card is giving us. I love UFC. Next we have Eileen Perez versus Macy Chiasson. Eileen Perez, the twerking girl that we've probably seen who twerks over her opponents. Yeah, that's definitely not going to end poorly for her ever. But she did beat Jocelyn Edwards, which that is aging very, very well. Is a unanimous decision machine. On a 5-fight win streak. Both of these fighters are ranked, one of the 3 ranked fights on this card. Is pretty good defensively, pretty well rounded, you know, just solid, kind of a 70 overall women's bantamweight. Macy Chiasson is on a pretty crappy skid. Lost against Yana Santos, which isn't good. Lost to Ketlin Vieira, which isn't great either. Does have the height and reach advantage by 6 inches on both, but 73% takedown defense. I think she'll be able to kind of stifle some of Eileen Perez early, but you know, I don't think it's going to stay that way. I do have Perez winning by unanimous decision. I think she's just going to be able to do her thing, maybe win the first and second round, and then Chiasson gets a little bit back in the third round, wins that one. But I think Perez will win this one pretty decidedly, and you know, I think Macy Chiasson being on the wrong side of momentum, it plays a lot into that pick. Now we have the prelim headliner, Ryan Gondra versus Jose Daniel Medina. Yeah, this is a bad one, dude. Name one of Ryan Gondra's fights in the comments without looking it up. I will give you flowers, dude. I don't know who this is. I know Jose Medina. He's just Mr., you know, gets slimed out by the best prospects in middleweight. But regardless, we have to put him on a card, and I guess this is the one to do it. Put all the crappy fights on one card, so we have to sit there and suffer. But Gondra has a 3-minute knockout in the Contender Series. He is from the LFA on a 7-fight win streak. 55% of his fights do win in the first round, and is more of a striker, so that's all I could really find on him. I couldn't, again, put any of his stats into account due to the limited sample size. So just, if I don't talk about the stats too much, that's why most of the time. Jose Medina, man, I mean, is there anything good to say? He got into 4 UFC fights somehow and has lost all 4, getting finished in the last 2. One of Atiba Gautier's victims. So we all know about Atiba Gautier. He is an absolute warrior and just made this dude look silly. 47% strike defense isn't great and is listed as a boxer. Doesn't look like much of one. I have Ryan Gondra by whatever the fuck he wants. Gondra by KO, TKO, submission, kind of whatever he wants to do, man. I think he'll probably knock him out in maybe the first or second round. I think that'll happen. Next, we have the first fight on the main card, Santiago Luna versus Angel Pacheco, another guy who I have zero clue who he is. Santiago Luna is actually not too bad, is a favorite for a reason in this one. Had a minute 48 knockout on UFC Noche last year. Is decently well-rounded. 43% of his wins come from knockout, 57% come from sub, and has finished every single one of his fights, and does have a reach advantage. So that plays into this one pretty well. Angel Pacheco, 13 years older than Santiago Luna, could play a little bit of a factor, but the experience in the fights is just about the same. Lost both UFC fights by decision. Is listed as a boxer, but 9.5 strikes landed per minute at 11.47 strikes absorbed per minute. Just kind of seems like a blockhead. He's going to move forward, is going to just kind of maul forward. I do have Santiago Luna winning by knockout. I think that he'll be able to get this finish. He just looks like a little bit better, or not a little bit, a lot better than Angel Pacheco, and kind of just a crappy matchmaking fight, in my opinion. But the finishing rate is there for Santiago Luna. I don't see him struggling in this one. He should be able to get the finish or a submission, whatever he kind of wants to do. Next, we have Emmanuel Rodriguez versus Kevin Boraz. Rodriguez just barely had a loss against Joseph Morales via split decision, so not too bad, but does have a 2-minute, 12-second knockout on the Contender Series. Almost 67% first round finish rate, so that's pretty cool. Kevin Boraz did lose to Sumar Darji. Alessandro Costa did lose to Joshua Van, my GOAT, so that's just bound to happen. Does have a 4-inch reach advantage, is a striker. 94% of his strikes come from standing, so this is a pretty even fight in my opinion. I think the odds are a little bit more even than what they're suggesting right here. I do still have Rodriguez, but I have him winning via decision. Don't know if he's able to get the finish here just because Kevin Boraz was able to take Joshua Van to a decision, so we'll see. I mean, Emmanuel Rodriguez is a decent prospect. I think that he'll have opportunities to try and get the finish, but I do see this one being a unanimous decision, especially being a flyweight bout. I think we're going to see some pretty good striking and some decent exchanges in this one. Then we have the fourth fight left on this card. Yeah, Edgar Chairez versus Felipe Bunes. I'm going to go Bunes in this one, or maybe Buenes. God knows. Both of these guys kind of fight similar, kind of opportunistic fighters, if you could call them that. Don't really go for takedowns, but have submission wins. So kind of like I know I'm talking about Paddy Pimblett a lot, or will talk about Paddy Pimblett, but they kind of fight in that similar way that like Paddy doesn't really go for takedowns, but he ends up getting submissions just from either a knockdown or just kind of a weird trip exchange. It's odd. And I watched both their film and it's very, very similar. But Edgar Chairez did have one of those submissions coming from like a bottom triangle. So that's kind of weird. Felipe Buenas is just capable on the ground. We're going to see some cool exchanges. And I think the odds, especially in this one, are a lot more even. And I would almost go 50-50 in this one just because they do fight so similar. It's whoever gets the moment or the opportunity to get a finish first, I think will have the win. And I do see it playing out that way. Kind of going into some of their resumes, Edgar Chairez did lose to Tatsuro Taira, not too bad. I mean, that's just bound to happen. Did lose to Joshua Van as well, but both of them were unanimous decision losses. So he does have a little bit of a chin. Didn't get finished by both of them, so that's a little bit plays into maybe he won't get finished as badly, but does have the reach advantage. 67% of his wins come from sub, but has a 0% takedown accuracy. Like I said, very strange kind of stat lines that I was reading into, and I had to watch some film on them. So. Buenas kind of the same thing. He did lose to Joshua Van and by knockout, so not great. Also did lose to an undefeated Rafael Esteban. Two losses that aren't too bad for me. Both of these guys are kind of capable, so it's kind of interesting to kind of place them in the... I don't hate this matchmaking just as badly as I hate a lot of the other ones, but interesting matchmaking, especially just the way that their fight styles are so similar. But I do have Chairez winning by unanimous decision. I just didn't know where to go with this one, so I'm just going to go UD if I'm not certain, and especially in flyweight in these smaller divisions, I'm just not going to go by knockout. But I could see a submission being made here. I could see maybe Chairez getting a knockout against Buenas, but I do think Chairez is just a little bit better and has just more capacity to not get finished, and I think that plays into my pick. Then we'll talk about Daniel Zellhuber versus King Green. And I'm actually not too down on this fight. I think this is a decent matchmaking fight. I think it's going to be a lot of striking in this one. We all know King Green's game. And Daniel Zellhuber has a 95% takedown defense rate, so that's really impressive. 91% of his strikes come from standing. Has had some great fights. Did lose to Michael Johnson, which isn't great in the grand scheme of things, but had a fight of the year against Esteban Ribovic at UFC Noche a couple years ago. Does have a reach advantage in this one, but the thing that plays into this one into my pick in this one is a 39% striking accuracy for Daniel Zellhuber. That isn't great. That's not something that you want to talk about, especially in a minus 500 favorite in this fight. And if you've ever seen King Green, most of us have, he is pretty slick. He keeps his hands down, yes, but he's slick, uses some of the Philly shell, moves around very strangely. It's just kind of a weird fighter to try and game plan for. And when he has a 62% significant strike defense, then you're doing the odds of Daniel Zellhuber able to land a super hard significant strike. Maybe it's not as much as we possibly think. And again, I know he's a minus 500 favorite. I'm not going to get too crazy. I have King Green winning by split decision. I think that he's going to be able to use that defense to stay out of the way a lot of the power shots of Daniel Zellhuber and frustrate him. And maybe King Green's able to mix in the takedowns. Again, 95% takedown defense for Daniel Zellhuber is very impressive, but King Green wants to keep the fight on the feet. And I think this plays into the way he wants to fight. I think this is a really good matchup for King Green to get the upset. And, we know the resume. We know what he can do. We've seen what he's able to do, especially kind of being one of the gatekeepers in the lightweight division. I just think that Daniel Zellhuber is on the bottom, or is on the wrong side of momentum right now. And I think that King Green is going to be able to use his defense, stay out of the way, stay on the edges of the cage, and be able to piece up Daniel Zellhuber. And I think he enters and exits the pocket really well. I know the reach advantage isn't great, but I'm going to go King Green, split decision. I see him winning the first and second round, and then Zellhuber having to really go out. And maybe he gets a third round finish, but I think King Green, I don't know. I'm going to trust him. I know it seems crazy. I'm going to trust this pick. Hopefully I'm right. We'll see if it happens and plays into it. But we'll talk about the co-main event. We have Chito Vera versus David Martinez. Another decent matchmaking fight. I'm not too mad at this one. Chito Vera has lost, I think, 4 straight, but has lost, or no, 3 straight, excuse me. But it lost against some good competition. Obviously, his title shot lost against Sean O'Malley, lost against Davison Figueiredo and Ayman Zahabi, but does have a reach advantage in this one. And 5.37 strikes absorbed per minute, can mix in takedowns. is pretty fluid on the feet. Just a good fighter, and he's fought a lot of the best competition in bantamweight. David Martinez is more of the prospect slash, guy moving into contender territory. I'm really impressed with David Martinez. He's coming off of a unanimous decision win versus Rob Font. Defended 5 takedowns in that fight, and he has a 100% takedown defense so far in the UFC. That's incredible. 91% of his strikes come from standing. That's really impressive as well. David Martinez impressed me, man, watching some of his film. 9-fight win streak, 68% significant strike defense. Just looks really good all around. This is a very even fight for me. I know the odds suggest that David Martinez is the favorite, and I am going to go David Martinez by unanimous decision. But it's really just, is David Martinez ready for the big leagues? And Chito Vera is very, very capable to get this win. He is on the wrong side of momentum right now with the 3-fight losing streak, but he is still incredibly dangerous and still a very competent fighter. David Martinez just looks a little bit better and does look like that prospect that will be moving into the top part of the bantamweight division. Finally, we'll talk about our main event, Brandon Moreno versus Loner Kavanagh. Loner Kavanagh being a late replacement for Asu Amabayev. Well, not that late. Like, we've known Loner Kavanagh was going to be the main event for a little while. So, yeah, man, Brandon Moreno seems like he's the main event for every single UFC Mexico fight since, 2022. So, I do know the odds are suggesting Brandon Moreno in this one, but I think he should be more of a favorite in my honest opinion. He's way more experienced. He's fought some of the best in the flyweight division. He's fighting at home in his backyard in Mexico. The crowd's going to be super amped up for him. He is coming off a bad loss against Tatsuro Taira, but Kavanagh's coming off a bad loss against Charles Johnson, so that kind of evens itself out there. Does have a reach advantage and is used to these championship 5-round bouts. That's really just my pick for that. I mean, that's just the obvious choice. Loner Kavanagh has only fought 10 times in MMA. Did have some pretty good fights in Cage Warriors. Only 4 UFC fights, though. 1 knockout. The rest being unanimous decisions. Just doesn't really impress me, and especially losing to Charles Johnson. That loss is not looking great either, especially after Charles Johnson lost to Alex Perez. Does have an 89% takedown defense, which could play into Brandon Moreno's strategy, but, he hasn't. Against Charles Johnson, he's not taking you down. And I just don't think that number is entirely accurate. Is listed as a kickboxer, does want to strike, but I see Brandon Moreno really trying to get takedowns, control time, win the rounds early, gas out Loner Kavanagh, and then be able to piece him up. I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to get a finish. Brandon Moreno was able to get a finish in the 3rd or 4th round, but I do have Brandon Moreno winning unanimous decision. He's just better, and that's just really the scenario. He's just better than Loner Kavanagh, and I think that he'll be able to get this one done. Like I said, hopefully we don't see Loner Kavanagh win and then we see another riot happening. That's just unbelievable if it does. But yeah, that's my picks for UFC Mexico. Again, I apologize to anyone who's going to watch this card. This one's an absolute travesty. But here we are, and we're going to watch it anyways. So hope you enjoyed. Hope you liked the video. Hope you will subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. I'm going to be doing a White House prediction card. That's kind of what the entire community is talking about and waiting on right now. Follow us on Twitter. We just hit 100 followers on Twitter. That's pretty awesome. Shout out Tristan for all the hard work he has been putting in to our Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Check us out. Check out our socials. Appreciate y'all watching. See ya.